Probably good enough. It's probably good enough. I almost feel like that last clap was laid out of spite. I will say I did consider going 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, clap, just to see where it went. But nah, I'm not going to do that. I will not do that because I am a professional. This is Radio Free Nintendo. I'm your host, James Jones. I'm joined today by Mr. Greg Leahy.
Ahoy, hoy, everyone.
Mr. John Lindemann.
Great to be here, James.
Mr. Guillaume Vayette.
Good evening.
Good evening. It is, in fact, the evening of May 16th, 2024. And this is episode, hold on. I wasn't on last week. I think about it. 875. Right?
Yeah, I believe that's right. Yeah.
Also, James, May 16th, I believe, is a very important date in Xenoblade lore because it's when a certain radio broadcast goes out.
Oh, no. I, for one, welcome our whatever the fuck happens, Overlord. I mean, honestly, like, yeah, it wasn't great. Let's be honest. It wasn't great. But at the same time, like, just kind of gesticulating around wildly to the current state of affairs. I'm back. I was out last week. I was on a vacation to John's intro where I want to say you used the word wandering, but that's not correct.
You were wasn't gallivanting, I don't think.
I might have been gallivanting, actually.
Might have been gallivanting.
Before anybody asks, I've not finished listening to the episode, but I have listened to about half of it. Because y'all went real long last week. But I was gallivanting in the corporate paradise that is Disneyland, which weirdly I might recommend, especially over a Disney World experience because it's just so much tighter. But yeah, there was a lot of really weird and crazy tech that at some point I'll probably talk about on the show because I was engineering brain went absolutely fucking mind sick trying to break down some of the shit that was happening in front of me. But no, it's not really space for today. Did want to thank Seren for hopping in and providing an absolute boatload of content, and John for his, I will say, cromulent hosting.
If by cromulent you mean incredibly professional.
I mean cromulent. Perfectly cromulent hosting.
I gotta look up cromulent now.
Boy.
Like, literally, I said, if by cromulent you mean professional because I don't really know what cromulent means off the top of my head.
Oh, I love that word so much. That I can't. Is that how many words do you think The Simpsons have put in the dictionary? I know dolt is in there as well.
Yeah.
It's got
acceptable or satisfactory. That's fine, James. I mean, I think it was much more than that, but
it's perfectly cromulent. Look, that's the goal for every episode. We are not aspiring to greatness here. We are just trying to survive. And we have made it to another episode. Therefore, you were successful. I appreciate the success. That is it. There's no intention here to debase or degrade the quality of the effort that you put forward. I did notice a lack of a cool image, but that's fine. We'll get by.
Yeah, I wasn't going to sully your reputation.
I didn't do one the previous week because I was stuck waiting for my flight for like 16 hours. So,
Yeah, I know you didn't. I don't think anybody even posted to Twitter. I was like, okay. So I posted 873 and 74 to Twitter because I was like, somebody has to clean this shit up.
Yeah, I was going to do it on the flight, but one, American doesn't have free internet, which makes them one of the last people to not have it. And two, I was so fucking tired after waiting for that goddamn plane that like I was just like, fuck it, I don't care. I don't care about anything. So yeah, nihilism caused by mass transit. That's where we were at. But there will be an image this week. I don't know of what of yet because we haven't recorded the episode. Well, we are, in fact, recording the episode as we speak, and that means we're going to do some new goddamned business. And so I want to start with Greg, who has very new business that I would like to hear about.
I suppose so. Yeah, I mean, last week I talked about playing Kirby and a bit, and I finished the story mode on that, but then I picked up this new game that was mentioned last week and started playing that, and so yeah, I'll return to Kirby, much like Kirby returned to Dreamland in that game sometime in the future. For now, yeah, it's Animal Well. This was mentioned as part of the deluge of like notable indie games that came out all on the same day last week. So yeah, it's I'd heard a bit about it, in the run up in terms of that this was something that was promising. Being sort of it's somewhat analogous to Axiom Verge in a way, in that it's kind of largely the work of a single person over a long period of time, and also Dan Edelman was sort of served in a similar capacity to the developer, kind of bringing it along, to market kind of thing, as he did with the Axiom Verge, certainly the first Axiom Verge. I can't remember what the situation was with the second one now. But this Animal Well is, kind of somewhat similar as a game in terms of quite a lot of overlap with Metroid. They're certainly not as like very directly similar as the first Axiom Verge was to like a kind of 8-bit Metroid. But here, it's like very, very strong on kind of atmosphere in a different way than, certain Metroid style games, because it's a bit more surreal. It's kind of eerie, and kind of odd, inscrutable, like not necessarily like outright horror, but like kind of unsettling, kind of melancholy. It's going for a kind of interesting mix of kind of a vibe, really, but all meanwhile you kind of go through a series of kind of puzzle platform challenges, but all inset in this one, kind of world, which I'd say is relatively substantially non-linear for this sort of game. Metroid style games, some of them are kind of they are non-linear in one sense and very linear in another, right? Because it's like, well, really, there's like a critical path around the world that may, kind of double back on itself, and you can fan out from it and find optional things. But really, there's like a very specific journey that the game is going to take you on that will kind of, return to places and stuff. But it's like, that's the path forward. This has more, like I said, of a legitimate non-linear element to it, in that, there are kind of objectives that are kind of laid out for you, although it's all, pretty much without text. There's nothing sort of where it's going to explicitly say anything about go and do this, but you'll kind of see by observing the world and using the map and so forth, like, okay, these are objectives for me to do. But certainly from my experience of it, it seems like to a fair degree you could do them in different orders, even though you might have different kind of items that might make certain things easier, if you have them in a particular sequence or not, for traversing, or even maybe like for doing like certain steps in a puzzle. But I would assume you could actually do it, kind of just with, a more kind of without some of those things that you might have got from elsewhere in the world. So it's kind of interesting looking at the construction of it that way. I mean, as I said, given that it doesn't have very much text in it at all, you really kind of left to you to experiment with things. If you get a new item that could do, just trying it out on various things. And so sometimes, I would try something like not particularly kind of all that logical, and it would do something and it'd be like, oh, that was actually useful. Like, and then like later you kind of think to yourself, like, are they really just counting on people to be that random with like experimenting with something? But then later on you'd find something where it's actually like encouraging you to do that thing specifically. So again, like the non-linear element kind of comes into play a bit there, I think.
Yeah, that reminds me a little bit of the Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom philosophy, right? Like where you get all your powers, but then you don't necessarily learn, quote unquote, like you're not taught them for most of the game until you need them, but like it's available to you at any time. Like if you figure something out, then you can use those abilities that way.
Yes, I think it is informed by that. You know, I think based on how long the game's been in development, it probably traces back to when Breath of the Wild first came out, I believe. You know, and like you said, Tears of the Kingdom is quite similar in that way as well, in terms of is like you have these kind of abilities, but yeah, sometimes, you know, you might not realise you could have been doing this with them, like, for all this time until there's, like, a particular thing that, yeah, kind of encourages you to try something. Whereas, yeah, there were cases here where I just kind of happened upon it by the sort of general, you know, the whole nature of the experience just kind of encourages you to try things, you know, just whenever you've got something new or anything, just it comes to mind, like, just try stuff, because it isn't going to explicitly tell you every, like, function of every item you get, or, you know, that kind of thing. So it's up to you to kind of try stuff and figure things out. And there is something, I'm sure, you know, there's going to be a certain amount of, you know, kind of, and there was, for me, you know, so some circumstances that were, you know, you might say needlessly frustrating, because, you know, maybe you were trying some things that were never going to work, or, you know, that kind of thing. But it's, you know, there is something to be said for a situation where, you know, less information is provided, because it does have a more kind of genuine feeling of having discovered something, that when, you know, you do that without as much kind of context and information up front to make that particular kind of find, or, you know, solving a puzzle, whatever it might be, it just, there's a more powerful sensation of discovery and, you know, kind of solving something when it feels like you're being given less information. Now, again, you know, some of these things, I think they are kind of, yeah, trying to sort of funnel you down certain ways, you make certain realizations without explicitly telling you things, you know, like, so I think that's good design, and it helps you get there. I think it's something, you know, sort of somewhat similar about Cocoon, although I'd say, you know, I think this is a genuinely a bit more hands off in a way that, you know, it makes you feel clever for having solved something, even if you might not have been that desperately clever, you know, for you to actually do it, because in the background they're kind of, you know, helping you without, like, flashing a hint on the screen or anything. So yeah, there's a few things, I guess, that again, I perhaps some might kind of seem a bit awkward to some people, in terms of it's very kind of specifically sticking to, like, a kind of old computer game kind of thing, of like a flick screen for each room is a screen kind of thing. And so in some cases there'll be like a situation where you're doing like a platform challenge, but, you know, like some sort of traversal that requires, you know, a bit of tricky platforming that overlaps multiple screens, you know, and, you know, like an MSX game or whatever, that means that then there's that discontinuity between, you know, like going from one screen to the next. Which, yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, I get what you know, because it's, I think you're trying to be clear about its sort of inspirations, in that way. You know, kind of like when La Milana, you know, had had those sorts of roots as well. But it's, you know, like sometimes there's like, yeah, this is kind of making this thing a little bit more difficult to do. But, you know, like I said, there's not terribly much of that. Most of the puzzles are, you know, more contained than that. I mean, there are other examples where, you know, there's like some kind of, there's no real combat in the game per se. You don't have, you know, kind of the ability to shoot things, or, you know, like in a Metroid game, or whip things like in a Castlevania, use swords or whatever, like Alucard. But there are hazards, you know, there are things that can kill you. And every now and again, there might be something where, you know, you got to get to a particular puzzle room, and then you're trying to do some puzzle where it's like, oh, there's some blocks that have got to move, you know, because of like switching challenges, and you're trying to like get through a gap in time, and you can get crushed and you can die. And when it's like, okay, well, there you go back to a save point, and then you have to get there again, and then you have to do the puzzle. Like that's a little bit of kind of friction there that it feels a bit out of place with some of the rest of the game, because there's things like when, if you might say, for instance, like fall into water or something, it just kind of spawns you back next to, where you fell from, and it doesn't even take health away and all that. So in some ways it's very kind of generous, and then other times it's like, look, I want to experiment, this is the whole game, right? I experiment to find a solution, and then sometimes there's some friction in the way of that, because I've got to trek a few rooms to get back to the point where I may or may not die if my experiment is a bad one, so it's a tiny few little bit of sort of awkward moments, but for the most part I think it hangs together very well. The puzzle designs are, pretty well executed, and pretty well contained, and there's a lot of stuff, a great deal of optional stuff. Really, it seems like. I mean, I've rolled credits on it, so I've seen an ending. I think, it does seem like you're kind of very much in the spirit of the Castlevania sort of branch of this sort of genre. It may well be sort of an ending, but then, like true endings may lay, sort of further ahead if I kind of because it does seem there are things in the game. I don't want to get too much into specifics, especially because it is so new, and also it is a game so much about discovery. But there are things that kind of suggest, how much more like I've got to get in terms of some of these optional things, and it's like, God, that's a lot. Like I feel like I've explored a lot of the map, but there's definitely some, kind of nooks left to explore. I can tell that much, and also there seems to be some more kind of of the kind of obtuse, the more kind of esoteric kind of puzzles that are on another level from just the regular ones required to kind of make your way around the world, or even just, pick up an optional thing. There's definitely some where it's like you go in a room and there's a big mural of something, and I don't know what this pertains to at all, but there's no way it's there for nothing. Like this is clearly going to be hooked into something somewhere, some kind of broad, which almost more getting into some of the kind of esoteric, like La Milana kind of stuff. Like that's not really desperately important to just running the credits the first time, any of that. But it seems like there is more of that there if you want it, and for me, I think this is something I'll keep chipping away at for a while, seeing how many more of these optional things I can find. Because when you do see another puzzle, another chest to open, like it's usually fun figuring it out, because it's just pretty damn well put together on that kind of puzzle design basis. So I would say it's very interesting, what it's doing with this kind of Metroid type of structure, because in many ways it's very different, not just from Metroid specifically, but from other games of the sort. Like I recently played a few months ago, I guess now, the new Prince of Persia, which is like very influenced by Metroid Dread, seemingly in particular, and stuff, and it's so much about combat and things, so they're both, I think, very, capable games, and they're both very obviously influenced by Metroid, but they are really, really damn different games, because that's the thing. As much as we might think of, the kind of games influenced by Metroid becoming a sort of genre unto itself, it's to some extent that's true, of course, but also it's a structure more than it is a genre. And what you kind of nest inside that structure is very much, open to, what the developer wants to do. And, in this case, it's a heavy emphasis on discovery and experimentation, rather than, in something like Prince of Persia, where it's like cinematic set pieces and, dialogue even, and a lot of combat and cool boss battles and lots of physical, ability. You become this super agile ninja, essentially, with like crazy sword wielding powers and time rewinding and all this stuff. Whereas this, it's all so modest. The pixel art, I think, is very evocative of the mood that it's going for. But it's deliberately kind of modest. He's just this little sort of blob of a character amidst this inscrutable, dark, animal, populated world where like there's just, you can kind of detect certain patterns and, things in different parts of the environment, but it's all, very hard to make sense out of. And I would imagine, the point is not for you to make sense of it entirely. It's meant to be kind of, incomprehensible on a certain level. You're just in a place that's, it doesn't entirely make sense and is alien to you and all that kind of thing. But also, it's going for, even though I think, what they do with lighting and even with this deliberately lo-fi approach is quite effective for, quite evocative of this place that they're building. And in that case, even though it is kind of, modest, it's on its own terms, it's doing a very good job of giving you that sense of place. But the gameplay as well, being so kind of mostly non-confrontational, and just you have to deal with certain animals that are like pests or that are hostile from time to time, but it's mostly about you just, figuring things out. So it is a testament to how kind of, variable and malleable this kind of game structure is, and I think there's definitely, for as good as I think, something like Prince of Persia is, and this for that matter, like I could imagine, some people you would not necessarily enjoy one, but could enjoy the other, because they are, that different in that sense. So it's been, a lot of fun so far. I did notice one like particular kind of interesting, culture reference in it, which is, a sort of, very, very direct, I think, reference to the Japanese film House. I don't know if you've ever seen the Criterion Collection cover for it. The face of the cat. Yeah,
the orange thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that face is just straight up in this game. It's an interesting choice. That was one thing that did feel like everything feels very and it does fit in. I'm not saying it doesn't, but everything kind of feels very like of a piece and like it's its own, kind of bespoke world. And then it's like, oh, there's the house cover art. I thought that was kind of strange, but I've really, really enjoyed it so far.
Excellent. Anything else?
No, like I said, Kirby. We'll wait for another time. The epilogue thing that's going to be the most sort of interesting part of that. And of course, you had the NSO, the Game Boy games went up.
Yes.
Finally,
we can't make our joke anymore.
No, he knew it couldn't last that much longer. It ended up being weird timing. It didn't it? Because it's like it was somewhat too late for the Japanese anniversary of the Game Boy launch, which there were 3 launch games, and in Japan they had the For the Frog, the Bell Tolls, the kind of somewhat of a forerunner to Link's Awakening that was Japan exclusive game, which was certainly not a launch title, but it was a little late for the Japan 35th anniversary and a bit early, like a couple of months away from the American one. So yeah, slightly weird timing, but they just filled in some holes with Alleyway and Baseball as the games that did come out at launch. I think both in Japan and America, and then it varied. Obviously, in America they had Tetris, and in Japan I forget exactly what it was. It's already on there. The whatever was it Mahjong? Maybe I forget exactly what kind of.
Almost certainly it's Mahjong.
Probably a good guess. Yeah.
When in doubt, Mahjong.
Yeah, well, there was on N64. It was Shogi, I believe, was the launch title in Japan.
Varying it up.
With Mario 64 and Pilot Wings. But yeah, so I did my usual, as I did on Virtual Console 13 years ago or whatever it was. And indeed, as I did as a child at the end of term on a friend's Game Boy, booted up, run through it, job done. So
about
Maryland.
9 minutes?
It's, he's so generous with the checkpoints. That's the thing I think, my biggest thing I'd forgotten in 13 years, is that it's just like, even when it's, if you know what you're doing, you probably won't die that much. And there's plenty of extra lives to be had. But when you do die, you'll find that, like, I'm not going back hardly at all on the level. Like, that seems really generous for a game from the 80s.
Mm-hmm. And it's generous with the lives. You can easily finish it with like 40 Marios. Also, but it's funny because like I played it back in the day, I think I got it for my birthday soon after it came out, and I remember like I never owned an NES, and I would play Super Mario Brothers at friends' houses, and Super Mario Land is so much easier than Super Mario Brothers, and yet I feel it's probably like I'm probably misremembering this, but I feel like it took me a month to play through it or something. Like I did not find it all that easy, especially like the side-scrolling shooter parts, which are, something unique to Super Mario Land. But like Tatanga, like the final boss, like when it shoots these big bullets that turn into 3 bullets, and he shoots at least 2 of them at once, or like there are more than 3 bullets on the screen at the same time. Like to me, when I was, I don't know, 10, that was like bullet hell. Like that was, I'm like, I don't know how to dodge this. I just don't know how.
Yeah, I think, I played through this relatively recently, and I think if I remember correctly, like everything was easy up until that, and then I'm like, I'm talking like I didn't die at all, and then I was like, the end boss was like I died several times. I was like, what?
Yeah, one thing I remember from playing it on an actual Game Boy in school was just how much harder it was to actually track the things that are being shot at you, relative to like playing it on Virtual Console or playing it, because the screen was, so much worse. Thing is, because like the platforming, you don't have to like take that very fast at all. Like you could take, I definitely hold the run button a lot less in Super Mario Land than I do in Super Mario Brothers or pretty much any of those games. Like just kind of, if you take it slow, it's pretty easy to avoid dying. But I think based on my memories, like obviously when you get to the shoot 'em up levels, that's when it's like, well, there's things moving fast on the screen, and that Game Boy screen it's not, it was not great for that. If you didn't have like good light conditions, or just the refresh rate on it, right, is slow. So if there are things moving at a particular speed, not that it's like crazy fast or anything, but it's certainly faster than me relatively deliberately going through the side scrolling bits. That's where, I think maybe that's one of the reasons why it's tuned the way it is to a degree, is because of that Game Boy screen. But I think when you're doing a shoot 'em up, I guess maybe those bits then, they kind of felt like it couldn't be that slow, and so I think maybe the screen struggled a bit more at that point.
Yeah, and I like by default, or maybe not by default. Maybe it's just that I had set it so that it did that with every game. But I had the Game Boy Color palette on for the Game Boy NSO, and I didn't love that because the background was too bright, but it ended up being too bright. Any filter that I used, I found like, so maybe my TV's just set a little bit too bright for games. But then I tried with like the Game Boy Pocket palette, and then I went to the greenish, original Game Boy palette. Yeah. They don't reproduce the smear. I feel like it's kind of a big lie, they should. Because that's not how the Game Boy looked back then.
It needs to look like you're trying to draw with a fountain pen in the rain.
The kind of the ghosting, exactly. I think the Castlevania collection Game Boy games, and Contra for that matter, they have a filter that does reproduce that kind of Game Boy look, without the smear, but it's like, I don't know. For me, it's like this feels a bit like playing on an actual Game Boy, but I can see what's going on. Like that was a nice medium, for that.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't think that Switch Online filter really is as good as that. You know what I mean?
No.
It's a little bit odd, but I guess that's the M2 difference in play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I played some Alleyway, and
Guess what that is?
yeah,
Arkanoid?
it's a breakout. It's Arkanoid has like these power ups,
Lore?
right? That can help you with
Arkanoid does have
finish.
lore. But yeah, it's all breakout. It's all breakout all the way down. It's just
Yeah.
breakout variations.
But
How
it's
dare
just
you
not a
slander
very
the
good
good name of
version
Arkanoid.
of breakout. Because you don't, you have very little control over where you're going to send the ball. I find, your ship is too small to really be able to precisely position your ship to bounce the ball where you want it to go, and so some levels it was just a nightmare trying to get that one last brick. Not a great game.
So Alleyway.
Yeah, I mean, if you're saying that Alleyway is just breakout, I mean, the next thing you're going to tell me is that R-Type 3 Final Evolved is just R-Type 2 Final.
It is.
I can't even say the name right. It's so complex. It's like I have to think about it. I can't even make the joke because I can't even think of the name right.
It's like an
R-Type
SAT
Final
question.
3 Evolved,
Like,
I guess. Yeah.
What's the sequel to R-Type Final Evolved 2? Ah!
It's like, damn you, Bido Empire, you got me again.
Maybe we're all inside the scheme. Who can say?
Yep. Oh, by the way, while I'm talking about that, what's funny is that on your PS5, the icon is R-Type Final 3 Evolved, but the splash screen that it shows for every game is still R-Type Final 2, by the way.
What? Jesus fuck.
So when you select the R-Type Final 3 Evolved icon, the splash screen that shows on your PS5, like the background, is R-Type Final 2. So there you go. It's amazing. Good stuff. Yeah, I don't know, man. I can't explain these things.
A well-made game, clearly not made by professionals.
Nope, not even close.
It's a most unprofessional game. Bearing in mind, this is the same development studio that made Disaster Report, the game that I reviewed it, and just had a bunch of question marks because I had no idea what the fuck was happening.
Yeah.
So this all checks out. Like
the legend continues.
When you're playing a game and you're like, is this a bug or is this deliberate? That's not a great sign, usually.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And when you're still not sure years later after you've written the review and talked to people about it, worse sign or better sign. Not clear. None of this is clear. I'm very confused. So that's the authentic experience. I'm going to go next because I have, first off, Greg, why is the FIFA World Congress on my television live from Bangkok, and how much money were individuals paid to put it there?
Yeah, that's. I think that's more of a question for you to answer, as well as possibly.
Well, why is it even being broadcast? I guess is the first question.
Yeah, that I would not even transparency, of course. I mean, they've always been very big on that.
The second one is, why were they 9 minutes late to start? Which is very funny. And the only thing they had was a splash screen with 5 languages saying it will start shortly. What a professional organization. Just absolutely on the ball on all things.
As someone who has sat through a draw for more than one draw for a World Cup finals in his time, it's, piss ups and breweries come to mind.
So bad. All right. So as I alluded, I was just at Disneyland, which is very Star Wars'd up. It was extra Star Wars'd up for May 4th, but they've really leaned into it since they opened up I can't remember what they call the name of that area, but essentially it's just a off-brand Tatooine camp. But they that plus I saw a movie that's back in theaters on a whim, because Oops is now back in theaters for its 25th anniversary, I guess. It's Greg's favorite line of any dialogue in any Star Wars film. Just Anakin saying "oops" because he blew up the fucking Trade Federation ship. So I did see that. So I was on a very Star Wars kick, and I was like, I refused to pay $70 for Jedi Survivor because I know those games aren't very long. I really enjoyed Fallen Order. Fallen Order is a great game. It turns out Respawn makes really good games, but I wasn't going to pay that. And that game actually just hit a year, so I figured it would be on sale. I forgot it's on EA Play, which means I get it through Game Pass. Because Game Pass gets EA Play, which is like a service getting another service getting you access to games, and that's very fucking weird, and I hate it. But hey, I got it. So I'm about 10-ish hours in at this point. I don't have a ton to say. Again, Respawn is really good at making games, and this is if you haven't played either of them, it is an acrobatic Souls-like. No, it's a very gentle Souls-like. It's not an absolute bastard of a game, but it doesn't have as effective a dodge roll. I'll tell you that for free. Fuck the dodge roll in this game. You have no iframes, but it's essentially a light RPG mechanics where you it's semi-run based, where if you get killed, you drop your experience. I mean, it has all very obviously, like, we played a bunch of Souls games when we made this, but it has the sort of tight control and acrobaticness that comes from Titanfall and Titanfall 2. And it feels very good. And so what's different about this one versus its predecessor is the spaces feel a lot bigger and a lot more three-dimensional and a lot more open. So it's much easier to get lost. It's much easier to not know where you need to go or to not be able to find the quest marker they've put out there, or just wander around and fall into a Rancor pit and get yourself absolutely annihilated because he's very hard. He's extremely difficult. But yeah, I'm having a good time with it. I don't have a ton to say. Like, if you have Game Pass, you should go play, and you haven't played Fallen Order, you should, because it's really good. It feels like Fallen Order might be a little bit tighter than this game. This game feels maybe a little bit too expansive. Like they were trying to make the world feel like you could explore it a la Xenoblade X, but it doesn't nail that feeling right. It just feels like it's big and open. Like, it doesn't feel like it's alive. So that's kind of the issue. I will say this, plus having just seen episode 1 in theaters again, which is the first time I'd actually seen that movie front to back since I saw it in theaters when it came out, which is a very weird experience. I think the random gibberish of battle droids, specifically the most basic model of battle droid, is an underappreciated art form, because boy, the place I'm in right now, there's a bunch of like antique battle droids from the Clone Wars just wandering around, and they have the most inane nonsense to say to each other. And I will just stand aside and let them talk before I go kill them, just so I can hear what dumb bullshit they have to say to one another, including bragging about like, I've already defeated 6 Jedi. And it's like the other one going, that's not possible. There aren't any Jedi left. You can't possibly have beaten 6 of them. And then the other one going, sure I did. And then they have this big long argument, and then one resets the other. And if you come around and kill them, the main character, Cal, has comments on a lot of the dumb bullshit they had to say to one another. It's very fun and very good writing. And I wonder how it is we haven't... In the Clone Wars series, the battle droids also are really played up for comedic effect, which is good because there are no other comedy relief characters in episode 1. I'm just going to choose to make that my reality. Because seeing that movie in 2024, I feel a different sort of way about one specific character. That's all I'll say. 25 years older than when I saw that character last time. But Battle Droid gibberish, excellent. Excellent A+ gibberish. Probably some of the best, like, overheard enemies talking to each other gibberish I've heard in a really long time. Great effort by all parties involved to deliver dialogue where like the people who are working with them are clearly put out by their just absolute stupidity. And so it's just like, yeah, no, this is perfect. Yeah, no, this is great. I love all of this. This is fantastic. More of that, please. More of like thousands of lines of characters just saying not just dumb bullshit to each other. Loved it. Had a great time. Yeah, I'm going to keep poking at this for a while. I did play the demo of, I'm blanking on the name of the game now. Shoot. Tales from Gundog, or Tales from Seoul Gundog. I will talk about that next week because I haven't quite finished it, so I just want to finish the demo and then I'll talk about it. Demo is currently only available on PC as far as I know. Liked it so far, but I'll give some actual insight on it next week. But again, I told y'all to watch the trailer a couple weeks ago. If you haven't, God, this game is pretty. So yeah,
and it occurred to me as we were talking about it 2 weeks ago that Gundog is, of course, a stupid name, but it's meant to sound like something else.
Yes, it is.
I hadn't put that together, but yeah, eventually I did.
It's neat. So yeah, that's really all I've got for new business. Anytime you go on a trip, you don't get to play a ton of stuff, and when you come back, you're just busy trying to put your life back together. So yeah, I'll have some more to talk about next week, but I'm gonna go ahead and pass it on to. Oh, I forgot who I wrote was next. Both of you. I want to hear about some cat stuff. So John, why don't you kick us off?
Sure, yeah. So been playing actually.
John and Guillaume,
because it's
playing.
Very short. But yeah, Little Kitty Big City, which interestingly enough, I actually the way I started playing this was I wanted to get, speaking of Xbox Game Pass or Game Pass Ultimate, I wanted to get that working on my Steam Deck, which is very simple to do. It's just installing Edge and then setting Edge as something that you can launch from within Steam. So while doing that, I wanted to make sure everything was working, and so right there on the front page, this was just released I think on the 9th. About a week ago, was Little Kitty Big City. And I was like, hey, I heard this is a cute game. Let's check it out. So I actually streamed this, and because this game isn't high action, it actually plays really well on Xbox cloud streaming. So, but it's available on, Xbox, PS5, Switch, PC. And so it's an interesting little platform game. I don't really recall how long it took me to actually play it through, but you start off as a cat, and it's sort of kind of like a cel-shaded look to it. And so you start off as a cat at the top of an apartment building, and you are sleeping outside your window happily, and you get disturbed, and hijinks ensue, and you wind up down at the bottom on the ground, at the bottom of the apartment building on the ground, and your goal is to get back up to your resting spot, to the room that you came out of. And while you're doing that, you meet a whole bunch of different animals, complete a bunch of different quests. The main thing that you have to do to progress the story really is upgrade your climbing ability, and you do that by finding fish, which you sort of uncover slowly as the game progresses. And so it's you walking around as a cat. It's you walking around this kind of facsimile of a Tokyo-ish neighborhood. I wouldn't even call it a city. It's only a few blocks probably wide, and there's different areas. There's a park with a kind of a waterfront, and there's a construction site, and there's some convenience stores and grocery stores, and there's these various areas that you can walk into, and your goal is to unlock various things. You can unlock hats and stuff like that, but also to just basically complete these quests for these different characters so that you can eventually improve your climbing ability so you can climb back up to the top of the building. So it's very cute, very charming. You can do things like pounce on birds in order to collect their feathers, which is used to unlock certain things. And you can find warp points and stuff like that. Karen was very
relieved that you released the birds after you catch them.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the kind of tone of the game. It's very, very unthreatening, very cute.
Yeah.
So, yeah. The only problem that I had with it actually was, I felt like the The controls aren't bad. It's a little bit difficult to kind of navigate some of the areas because I just feel like it would have been nice if it could kind of snap you to things sometimes. Like, it's very easy to kind of mess up a jump and just fall all the way down back to the ground off of like the third story of a building. And then you have to climb your way back up. And also, for some reason, even though I've only found one spot in the entire game that actually required this, if you climb up, because the conceit for climbing is that there's ivy on the side of a building and you climb up the ivy. So you'll see as you're walking around the city, you'll see these areas, you'll see these walls on buildings that have ivy on them, and that means that you can climb up that wall to get to the next floor of the building or the roof of the building or what have you. The only problem with that is they have a mechanic in there where if you press on Xbox, press the A button, you will like jump off of the, sort of like a Metroid kind of, you jump onto the wall and then you can bounce off of it, right? But the problem is I just kept doing that, trying to kind of mess with the camera, and so it would screw me up more often than not, and really that's not really used in the game at all. This whole kind of, this ability to climb up onto a wall and then launch yourself off of it, it's really never used in the game, so I don't even know why it's there, but that can be kind of frustrating. And also, actually, one of the achievements is bugged that I found. I think it's already been fixed on Steam. It hasn't been fixed yet on Xbox, but it's the one where there's birds' nests, and you have to go and collect 10 of them or destroy 10 of them. And I did all 10 of them, and I only have 9. And so it's a known bug. So, yeah, so there's going to be an update for that on the consoles, I'm sure. I think it's like I said, it's already been patched on Steam. But, of course, has to go through the old console certification cycle before that thing gets released. So I'm anticipating probably the upcoming week, probably on Tuesday, a patch will go out for it. But still, yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, Guillaume, I don't know what you thought of it. I thought it was pretty cute. Also very just chill. The only thing I have left to do is, I've beat it. The only thing is just achievement hunting at this point.
Yeah, I finished. I made it to the top of the apartment as well. But so basically, I only have side quests and achievements to go after. I found that the game is quite bugged. I'm playing it on the Xbox as well. This podcast has been brought to you by Game Pass. But yeah, I don't know if it's because I never turn off the game, because of I forget what that feature is called, fast resume, or I don't know. But when I turn off the Xbox, I go back in, I'm still in my game, so it doesn't. So I don't know. Maybe it's because I've been playing it and never turning it off. But there's lots of clipping. There's lots of sometimes there's a planter in the middle of the street. No, it's not there. Okay, no, it's back. Things appear and disappear. I've had a cat taking a nap in midair. All sorts of stuff that, and yeah, the camera clips also a lot through the geometry. So that's been a little bit disappointing, but at the same time, this is a game where you play as a little kitty, and so you kind of forgive the game because it's freaking cute. That's basically the attitude that I took into this game. There's a lot of frustrating bits because, as you mentioned, John, the controls aren't bad, but they're sometimes it's a little bit iffy. The cat doesn't always do what you think that it should be doing. Yep. And so it can be frustrating, but then you're playing as a little cat, so it's very nice. And it's very I don't want to spoil too much, but some of the side quests, some of the achievements are a lot of fun. It's very cute. This Tokyo neighborhood has its own Godzilla equivalent, and there's a shop where they sell all the the Ultraman or Godzilla merchandise, and so there's a fun little achievement that you can get there. There's and people are walking around. They don't really have a face, but they're walking around. They're looking at their phones, or they're walking around with a bagel in their hand. And some missions will be make them drop the bagel, then get the bagel to the cat, who says that he'll leave his napping spot if you bring him a bagel. Like there's you can at some point you do need to steal someone's smartphone. So you make people trip. Because the game again is a little bit buggy. Like sometimes I go straight through their legs and doesn't do anything. Other times, like you make them fall flat on their faces. So you steal their stuff and then they get up and they're mad and they stomp around and it's all very cartoony. It's all very cute. It's ultimately it's a good game just because it's a well executed like premise. Like it gives you exactly what you're looking for in a game called Little Kitty, Big City, basically.
You have a meow button, so
it's a cute little kitty meow. Very high pitched, very cute.
Yep, and you have a whole bunch of hats where like you can put a shark's head on your cat. I mean, pretty much any like kind of picture you've ever seen online of a cat wearing some sort of adorable outfit, it caters directly to that.
Yeah, the game is very much aware of online trends or of the past few years, because there's if you encounter a cucumber, the cat will, jump up and, be scared by it. So there's a lot of meme-inspired stuff.
Yeah, and also a lot of you can also pick things up. Your cat can pick things up in its mouth, so that lends itself to some of the puzzle solving and also just some of the hijinks like you can get into as well. So,
right,
it's cool. Like you can grab trash cans of soda, discarded cans of soda, and put them in the recycling bin and stuff like that. So it's a cute little game. It's generally kind of out almost call it like a mischief platformer almost. Like you're just kind of you're definitely going around kind of trying to cause trouble as this cat. You can swipe with your right paw, swipe with your left paw, and so there's like certain kind of puzzle things that you can do with that, and you get like one of the achievements is you knock 100 items off of a shelf sort of thing and break them. That's like one of the achievements. There's a lot of kind of cat meme stuff, and also in the dialogue with some of the NPCs as well, and some of the quest givers is very much up with current online trends. Like you run into some sort of an insect and he's terrified because he does PR for this famous cat on social media, and he's lost his. He's not social media. He's no, I don't think so. I don't think they went that far.
What a fucking
But for
mess.
example, this little insect has lost its phone that it uses to post social media for this famous cat. It's dropped it in cement, and so you have to go figure that out. But there's a lot of stuff like that.
This is killing me. This is actually killing me.
Yeah.
But
I tell you what it's good for, and Guillaume will probably attest to this, is it's great for achievements for reward points, because the achievements are easy as pie. So if you really cared so much, you could sit there and you could milk that game for like the one achievement a day reward on the Game Pass rewards.
Mm-hmm.
You could easily do that.
That's what I've been doing. Yeah,
there you go, Guillaume. I knew it.
The only reason why I haven't gotten all the achievements yet is because you got to save one a day. That's.
I love it.
I don't know.
I love it.
The whole rewards thing is a blight that's kind of messing up the way that I play games, and I don't like it. I don't like how easily manipulated I am.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you advice that John gave me when it dealt with Forza Horizon. Just stop. Just stop.
Yeah.
Just don't do it. Just don't do it. You only got to miss one, and then you're free.
Yeah, that is true, right? That's exactly what I said. Just miss one, and then you're free.
Yeah.
It's like once you break that perfection, it's over. Forget it.
Because I had everything.
It'll never be perfect again.
I had unlocked everything. Every single weekly event. I had them all, and it was just like, you just have to miss one, and you're free. And it was right. He was right. I missed one. And it was over.
Yeah, then it's just mentally, you just have to break yourself of that habit. Yep.
All you have to do is not get achievements. Just sign out of Xbox. Sign out of Xbox.
Yep, it's the urge to complete that kills you.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, for me, I stopped once I realized that achievement was bugged. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to bother with the rest of these achievements right now. I'll just wait until it's patched. But they're all easy achievements, so.
But what if you could just keep hammering on it? Maybe it's not bugged. Maybe you just need to, maybe 1 out of 1,000,000 times it works.
No, it's definitely bugged because you can't get to the, I've destroyed the 10th nest. It's literally not in my game anymore. And in fact, somebody on Reddit, they said that in order to trigger the achievement, they had to go and start up a new save file and go and do it.
John, what if you just start a new save file?
I could, but I'm not going to bother. I'll just wait.
But perfection.
You can't get me, man.
But perfection's I'm out.
I missed one.
Is right there.
I missed one. No, that's the thing. Now it's imperfect. It's just a 9 out of 10 that I stare at every time I hop onto that game.
You don't even know what wabi sabi is. Get out there and get that fucking perfection.
I'm out. I'm out.
No,
it's
you're
a 9 out of 10.
You're back in.
No, it's a 9 out of 10, and I can't do anything about it.
You and your fucking cat puns are back in.
I'm out.
You don't even know what wabi sabi is. It's an excellent title for the episode. I'm just gonna go out and say it right now.
I am quitting social media, James.
Ah!
That's it. I'm out.
No more fucking cat games.
Yeah, but there's
so many animals. There's so many animals you can make games about.
Yeah, I do. I do not regret playing through it. It was a very, very relaxing game to play through. I got annoyed maybe only once, and it was just because this one area, what they asked you to do climbing up a wall was just annoying. It's just with the camera and the way that you attach onto walls and stuff like that. It was just just annoying. That's the only thing that can really get annoying in that game. But overall, it's pretty amusing. You can trip people and steal their smartphones and stuff like that, and you can nuzzle up against people walking around, and they pet you, and it's pretty funny. It's a perfectly good game.
That's it. Nope, that's it. We're done. That's the end of the episode. Fuck this show forever. Last RFN. We did it. 875 was the last RFN, and it's over now. No music. Just cut the feed.
Yeah, you only have to miss one, and then you're free.
It's true.
That applies to achievements and this podcast.
That's right. Take heart, listeners.
That's right. Listeners, you also only have to miss one, and you're free. You can escape.
That's the toughest thing about my Iron Man streak, James, is the fact that,
it ends after 3 episodes. Yeah, it's very difficult.
I don't know what you're talking about, but
I think I was on 20, so I don't want to hear it. All right. Guillaume.
Yeah.
Please, for the love of God, free us from this segment.
Yeah, now for a game that I haven't been playing on Game Pass, I've been playing it on the Switch. And this is a game that's been recommended to me by a listener, Evan B. I can't remember exactly the context, but it must have been in the comments on the forums of NintendoWorldReport.com to an episode where we talked about some Game Boy inspired game. And I think that I mentioned this looks like it should have been kind of a Final Fantasy Legend send-off, but it's not, and I wish that were a thing that existed. And so Evan was like, well, try For a Vast Future. The thing that you wished existed exists. So yeah, For a Vast Future is a Game Boy looking Final Fantasy Legend inspired in some ways, at least in terms of its looks. RPG. It doesn't play like a Saga game, so it's not like this obtuse thing where if you use a certain item, your speed will increase and etc. There's no really opaque system like that. It's a lot more straightforward. But as soon as you put as soon as you see it, oh, these are the tiles from Final Fantasy Legend. These are the these sprites on the world map are very much Saga inspired. They're not exactly the same, but that's what they're going for. So it's this little game. I'm already about a little bit more than halfway through, and I've been playing it for perhaps no more than 3 or 4 hours. So it's a short game, bite-sized. I bought it a couple months ago, like it was on deep discount. It must be like $10, I think. Normally, I paid like $2 for it or something. There's a special edition that I couldn't figure out. There was this weird thing where I think that the base game was $10. The special edition that normally goes for $20 was $2. And I was like, why would I go for the normal edition if, like the special edition seemingly only adds color palettes. And I don't see why you would need another color palette than the default puke green Game Boy color palette. So I got the special edition purely because, it was cheaper. So it's this little RPG where the story is nothing to write home about. You're just like, it's in the future. There's been a war that basically decimated the Earth. You're an orphan that grew up in an orphanage. But you're grown up now, and you're gonna set out to scavenge and try to become rich. And you stumble upon on one outing to this decrepit old factory thing, you stumble upon a cyborg left from the war, and you decide that it seems like you determine it seems like if you were to sell him for parts, that would make you quite a lot of money. So you pretend that you're gonna help it find its people, its origins, and so that's your second party member. Then very quickly you get your third and fourth ones, which they've got like some soldier from the war. It's a little bit unclear when the Earth was decimated. It kind of feels like, at first I thought well, it must have happened in the games far past, but then you meet people who 25 years ago were active participants of the war, so it's a fairly recent thing. But yeah, so eventually you learn of this, conspiracy or whatever. You see that maybe the war is not as over as you thought it was, that things can always get worse. And so, we'll see where it goes. It's not, the writing is good enough, but it's not the great writing. Sometimes I'll talk about how much I enjoyed the writing in A Short Hike or stuff like that. Here, it gets the job done. It's not terrible, but so I'm not playing this for the story necessarily or the writing. It's really mainly because it evokes warm fuzzy feelings of watching a game, playing a game that looks like Final Fantasy Legend 2, a game that I grew up with. So at that, it excels, and also by not being incompetent in terms of RPG mechanics. I think it's hooked me. This is good enough. I want to be playing this. This is pretty fun. The combat system is interesting because there's no there's no magic or anything, and you level up the traditional way in gaining experience points, but you also get skill points, basically, which you can assign yourself. And I think that there are 5 categories that you can assign them in, so you can guide your character's growth that way. You've got dexterity, which affects the effectiveness of items. You've got some other thing, accuracy, I assume, that's for your gun, the effectiveness of your gun. You've got luck, which can have various effects. You'll get more loot when you at the end of an encounter, but also you might be lucky and not waste an item or a bullet when you use it. Anyway. And I forget what armor and evasion, which do exactly what you expect them to. Evasion would also make you more resistant to status effects. And so it's interesting in that there's no, the currency in this game is bullets, ordinary bullets. But the guns can shoot other types of bullets. And these other types of bullets you can collect, you can get at the end of a battle randomly. But also, in various places in the game's world, you get vending machines, basically, where like for the price of 2 ordinary bullets, you get an ice bullet. And for 3 ordinary bullets, you get an explosive bullet. And so that's the economy, your ordinary bullets. And the enemies that you fight will all have a weakness, of course. And the bullets, not only sometimes, like they've got kind of an elemental type thing to them where you want to shoot the enemies with the thing that they're weak against, but also they can give the enemies status effects. Like the ice bullet can stun them, freeze them for a little bit. The fire bullet can burn them, and like they'll be burned over time, etc. So that's for the guns, but also like the items are surprisingly like are a big part of battles, because outside of the bullet and bullet types, you've also got items that are mostly used in the same way. Anyway, I won't get into the details here too much, but like there's like some restrictions with the bullets, some stuff that you can't do. But anyway, like, so you've got items that you can craft from other stuff that the enemies drop when you kill them, and so like if you can spec your characters so that some of them are good with using the items in battle, and some of them are good with the guns. And so that's how you balance things. You don't, because not all of your party members can use the special bullets once one of them has equipped them. No 2 party members can both have the explosive bullets, for instance. They'll have to use different types. You want to balance things out where like the other characters are just using items in battle so that they're not hogging bullet types, basically. Anyway, I don't know if this is interesting, but like it is super. Like it took me a little bit of time to get my head around the combat system a little bit, and at first I was carrying too few items around, and that made combat a little bit frustrating. But now that I understand a little bit better that I'm supposed to be crafting a whole bunch of grenades and a whole bunch of zap grenades, which have a electricity elemental effect to them. Now that I understand I'm supposed to carry a bunch of them whenever I go into one of the dungeons, I'm having a pretty good time. And yeah, like it's a fun little RPG. Like it's exactly what I was hoping for. And I'll say that the soundtrack is very good and is very close to something that I would expect from the Final Fantasy Legend series. The one thing where I think that the game is not as strong as I wish it were is the enemy portraits in combat. Because if you look up Final Fantasy Legend 2 bosses, like you were fighting Roman and Greek and Norse and Japanese gods, basically, or like you had like samurai, you had all sorts of cool looking monsters drawn with just 4 shades of green. And in For a Vast Future, the enemies are okay. Like they're all kind of future themed. There are robots and there are scientists and there are soldiers, but the character portraits are not to the level of quality that what was in the Final Fantasy Legend games, in my opinion. So I find that a little bit, I don't know, a little bit disappointing. But outside of that, the game looks the part, sounds the part, and yeah, I'm having fun, and it's good to have, a fun little RPG that's just maybe like 8 hours to get through. So, I'll be done by this time next week. I'll be done with it, and I'll probably be like, okay, good. I got exactly what I wanted. Cool.
Cool. I'm glad you got exactly what you wanted.
Yeah. It's a great feeling.
Anything else that you want to talk about?
Why? Am I going to get exactly what I want, James?
You probably want the episode to end right now, if that's the case.
Bro, that's what I was going to say, yeah.
So that's it for this week.
10:30 end time?
That was it for my new business.
All right, well, that's it for this segment. Not this week. We have some email to do. We got a lot of email, actually. I'm pleased with y'all. I'm very pleased with y'all. So keep sending them. But I'm going to give you the email address. We'll get on the other side. That's a teaser. Stay tuned to hear where the email address for the email should go. It's the same place. It's always gone. But stay tuned anyway. We're back, and I promised you a teaser of what the email address would be. And I am going to deliver on that teaser by asking Guillaume, what is the email address this week?
The first letter is R.
This week.
And I'll reveal the second letter in 10 minutes. I don't know. Is that what we're doing? Like you're teasing? Am I supposed to stretch this out, or can I just spit it out?
I teased it coming into this segment.
Okay.
Going out of the last segment. This was to keep people through the break.
All right, so it's RFN at NintendoWorldReport.com.
Oh, I was on the edge of my seat. All right, well, that's RFN at NintendoWorldReport.com. If you have questions, thoughts, comments, music suggestions, all of the above, none of the above. If you have a stupid game you want us to play, if you have a theory that you need us to hear because you want to give us your brainworms, you can send those to RFN at NintendoWorldReport.com. And with that, we're going to kick off this segment with an email of particular newsworthy note. This is from GX, who writes, Dear RFN crew, Sony, in their infinite wisdom, has opted to replace Jim Games as a Service Ryan with 2 new CEOs, one for studios and one for platforms. This seems like a great idea, especially considering that nobody likes synergy between hardware and software, and Sony's divisions famously get along really, really well with each other. As such, what 2 people would you like to put into separate Nintendo hardware and software leadership positions with equal authorities to maximize the potential for conflict? Conflict. I don't see how having 2 CEOs could ever go wrong. Steros.
I hope this is like something where, they ran into some like genuine problems with, kind of not having people specialize in these areas somehow. And it is a reaction to a specific problem that they think they're going to solve. I hope it's that rather than it's just, otherwise it seems like it's opening a can of worms for no good reason.
It's like the idea of the CEO is that they don't have to be involved in the nitty-gritty of anything. In fact, they shouldn't be. They should be a step back, and they are effectively responsible for making the tough decisions. And you need to think this is the George W. Bush I'm the decider thing. Like there is some value to that in a major organization because that person can be held to account for making the bad decisions. But also it's their
they can be held to a gold they can be held to a golden parachute.
That's true. But the idea is that the board can remove them if they're not making the decisions that are being successful, and they can remove their immediate subordinates for failure to do the same. So essentially, if they're not getting the outcomes they need, let's say there was a director of hardware and a director of software, and one of those 2 sides was letting them down, he could remove that person and name their successor with the assistance of the board. Any position that senior is going to have board involvement in hiring and firing. But generally speaking, if the CEO goes to the board and says, hey, I have a CTO or whatever that is not working out, the board's going to back the CEO. Or they're going to say, like, no, actually, we like that person and you're done. But having 2 CEOs answer to... And this is in an organization in which They are the CEO of a company that is part of another company in which they have a boss whose title is also CEO, which is going to be very confusing. But this is like, you're basically getting into like Holy Roman Empire titles at this point. Where like, yeah, I'm a king, but I answer to a king, and he answers to a king, and he answers to an emperor, but that guy's normal title is Duke because he was elected. It's fucked up. Everything's fucked up. Also, he answers to my boss sometimes too. But like, there is a certain amount of just like, this is just corporate executive title bullshit. But yeah, somebody needs to be in charge. Like, big organizations need someone to say like, this is the strategy we're pursuing at a holistic level. Or you become Sega, and you don't want to be Sega. Being Sega's bad. Like, the idea of like, no, we're going to pull the boat this way. No, we're going to row the boat this way. Can absolutely happen when you have two reporting structures and they don't share a boss who's involved in their day-to-day operations. I would presume their boss, their collective boss, is the head of Sony. The head of Sony writ large, who I can't remember who it is. It used to be Howard Stringer. He's gone, so the nominal cause of a lot of the Sony backbiting of I want to be the one to kill Howard Stringer and take his powers is no longer present. I don't know who Sony's current CEO is. Kenshiro Yoshida. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. He was. I want to say he took over for Hirai, actually. So, yeah, like, there is like a layer of authority there, but if he's overseeing all of Sony, that's a big, large organization that does many things. And so being in charge of the division that's responsible for development of Morbius 2 and also the Xperia phone, or whatever they call their current phone line now, which Sony still has a phone line. I don't know why, but they do. They're putting like 36K cameras in them because Sony doesn't know what the fuck they want. And the responsible for producing whatever dumb bullshit Sony still makes, I don't even know anymore. And also the video games division. Like, you can't have that many responsibilities and be able to make day-to-day decisions. And you need someone overseeing your games division who's making the day-to-day decisions because they're engaged in conversations all the time. Like, this is their job, and their job is to then report that up to the CEO and give them the summary that they can absorb. But if you've got two people doing that, who's going to settle disputes between them? And the answer is no one. Because the CEO of the company, when you go to them, is going to go like, I wasn't there, I don't know, you figure it out. And that's not success. Now, if they're both pulling in the same direction, it's probably fine. But eventually, there will be a reason when they're not pulling in the same direction. And let me give you a really good example of one might be. Sony released a bunch of information about their current platform sales and the usage rate of their consoles. And John, I'm going to ask right now, what percentage of people who are logging into the PSN network, which I know I just said network twice, logging into PSN, what percentage do you think are using PS5s versus PS4s?
I just saw this number. I think it's, isn't it like 50%?
It is 50%. Half the people who are active PSN users are still on PS4. That's a big percentage 3 years into the console's life cycle. And if I was on the software division, I'd be pointing at hardware and going, they need to find a way to get the price down. And if I was pointing at hardware, I'd be pointing at software and say, they need to find us a way to move some goddamn units. Well, guess what? Now we've got a conflict. Who's responsible? And yeah, it's that simple. That's all it takes. So the question is, how can we foster this kind of absolutely destined for dysfunction that anyone who's ever worked in a corporate setting can see a million miles away? How do we foster this at Nintendo with a selection of two executives that head up hardware and software in such a way that we end up with complete dysfunction that is destined for, I'm going to call it, corporate trench warfare? And
it's for the players, James.
It's for the play. Well, yeah, it is. And I've got a couple possible answers, and I'm not sure what permutation of the different positions would create the maximum chaos. Like there's a few type names where I could put them in either slot and create unique and wild chaos. Like, what if Sakamoto was Miyamoto's boss? Think about the fucking chaos of Sakamoto being in charge of all Nintendo software. Okay, but now apply that same chaos and say Sakamoto's in charge of developing what the next Nintendo hardware is. And we're going to attenuate the hardware design to what Sakamoto thinks games need. Like there's no chance that goes well. But it's going to be wild.
I feel the problem is with this is something that's much more applicable to like old school Nintendo, like Yamauchi era Nintendo, than it is to the current one. I feel like if for some bizarre reason they were forced to hire 2 CEOs now, there'd just be 2 more bean counters from the Pokemon company, because that's what they've done for the last couple of years for Kimishima and for Furukawa. So it's just like, nope, let's do that again, maybe, and again, in fact. Whereas the old days, now that was a little bit different, because of course, those R&D divisions back then, before they started getting consolidated, as we know, Miyamoto's group was R&D 4, Gunpei Yokoi's group was R&D 1, and then 2 and 3, they were more hardware focused, weren't they?
Right.
So you kind of had some of this going on. You had these people who were not like clearly, like certainly Yokoi was the most senior, but it wasn't necessarily the case of like, okay, well, he's, has more authority than the people in the other R&D sections. And ultimately, it was always going to come down to Yamauchi. So, you did have this weird kind of power structure back then where, I don't know how rivalrous it actually was, or how rivalrous, Yamauchi wanted it to be, in terms of people trying to kind of, outdo each other with creativity and with different ventures. We know in practice, for instance, even though, again, it wouldn't necessarily been R&D 1 that would have like entirely come up with the hardware for something like Game Boy or Virtual Boy by themselves, because I think there's certainly one of the other divisions would have been involved there as well. It was definitely their job to populate it with software. We already talked about those games that were on, it came on NSO this week. Like they're all R&D 1 games. Virtual Boy, like virtually everything that they did was R&D 1. As we said, they was kind of spread thin enough that you had like the composer of Super Metroid directing a pinball game for Virtual Boy, because it was like, okay, well, this is our job. Like, we've got to kind of come up with all the software to like launch this system. So, we're going to do everything we can. So you had these kind of quite quite a clear division of responsibility in some cases, which then gets to weird places of like, okay, well, we need a Mario game, a Super Mario game specifically for the Game Boy, but, Miyamoto's group's not going to do it because they're looking at the next system. They're looking at Super Famicom. So you have to do it. And that takes you to weird places like Super Mario Land 2, with the kind of like almost somewhat kind of I don't know, slightly resentful attitude towards like Mario's celebrity and status, and the possibly being reflected in like the sort of the giant statue of him and all this stuff like that. That was a weird division of labour back then, and so I guess the real question is, how would one bring that back today?
Well, I think you need to start with people who have some degree of ego, because like that's an important component. But you'd also want to try to have a situation where like maybe you would have somebody who is a techno supremacist, but they wouldn't be on the hardware side, they'd be on the software side. So they'd want to do more. They'd want to be able to have more capability. And then you would have somebody who is more in line with Nintendo's current hardware aspirations on the hardware side, essentially denying them that. Maybe you'd put somebody who wants to pursue more traditional game design or more action game design on software, and then on hardware you'd put somebody who's like, okay, but the controllers have too many buttons. What if we made it look like a TV remote? Like, you're looking for creating these sort of like divergent opinions on what gaming should be in the year 2024, and then putting them in position so that they can execute their vision, but only in half of the product, so that you end up with product that's ill-suited for the system it's on and systems ill-suited for the software being built. And I think that's how you maximize your conflict, because I don't think you're going to be able to create just, hey, we're not moving units, I'm going to point the finger at this guy, and he's going to point the finger at me. Because I don't think culturally that would fit as well as it does in a Sony situation, where Sony's going to be able... Sony has a long and we'll call it colorful history of executive backbiting that Nintendo doesn't really have a culture of.
And the Sega situations that you've already mentioned, that obviously had a very strong regional component to it, because and the reason why that could happen, I guess, is because, you know, that had a certain amount of kind of recognition for, you know, the Mark III and the Mega Drive in Japan. But it was really the Genesis success in America and Europe that, you know, brought Sega's video game ventures to, you know, home video game ventures to prominence, right? So that, especially the American office, it gave it a sort of degree of power, right? That was somewhat, you know, it's never going to happen the same way with Nintendo, because while Nintendo obviously be hugely successful outside of Japan, it's never in such a way that it's like, okay, well now, you know, we're just going to do what, like, you know, the American branch thinks is best, or, you know, like it was never, the dynamics never got to that point, because they were always largely, you know, very successful in Japan first and foremost. So so Sega ended up doing some truly bizarre things of self-sabotage and, you know, the overlapping like 32X and Saturn initiatives and truly strange things. So, yeah, you can't really replicate that either. The geographical, like, it's always going to be Japan.
We can try.
It's always going to be Japan-centric. It's like, people thought Reggie was way more powerful than he actually was. You know what I mean? Like, he was mostly just, you know, there as a lightning rod for you know, the press to talk to and to seem like he's like important or make, you know, the only decisions he was making was like, fuck Disaster Dave Crisis, fuck Xenoblade, like that presumably was, you know, about the extent of what he was doing.
I would say Reggie, more than the other regional CEOs, had to use the term stroke. Like, he could call the Japan office over at NCL and say, like, hey, I think we need to do this. And I think he had enough stroke, both from his time at other ventures, Bigfoot Pizza Boy, and from the success he had putting together a marketing strategy for the North American release of DS and Wii, that he at least was able to make the call, and his opinion was considered when the decisions were being made back at NCL. I doubt NOE's executives, and I know Nintendo of Australia and New Zealand's executives were not as considered in what they're thinking.
Of course not. That's just commensurate with the importance of the American market. I mean, it's such a massively important market, and we already talked about this. You wouldn't have heard it yet, actually, James, but in the closing music for last week, it talked about the fact that Reggie is sort of credited with the initiative to put a Metroid Prime Hunters demo in with DS's, and they hadn't even been at the company that long. Then, you know, the DS and Wii, obviously by definition, they haven't happened yet. They haven't been the big successes there. So I think, yeah, at that particular time, they were definitely more interested in having someone in that role play, you know, a more active kind of part in these things, and trying to someone who maybe was more attuned with, you know, the kind of the marketing needs of that of the US sector and all that kind of stuff. But like I said, I think the fact that he was more powerful, more with real input than his predecessors or his counterparts in other kind of regions. It's somewhat led to it somewhat. I think sometimes I think it was overstated how powerful he was.
Oh, he definitely
at the same time.
I would guess he was at the peak of his power, probably more powerful than Doug Bowser is now. But he also came in from the outside in a way that probably gave him additional credibility.
And they were kind of in a, especially for the American market specifically, and you could widen it out to other Western markets as well. It's quite a low ebb for them.
Right.
When Reggie came in, they were kind of recognizing we have a problem. We need people, from the outside to kind of come in and help us solve it. And obviously there's been more struggles since actually, while Reggie was there, but maybe not quite to the same sort of extent where they were kind of, facing up to their operation in that regard, just maybe wasn't quite fit for purpose. I mean, you've got to remember, it was still, relatively early days, even in the early aughts, wasn't it, really?
Right.
From when it's just like Yamauchi's son-in-law is running things, not that long before that, where it's, really quite sort of antiquated and not terribly professional kind of way of doing things at that point.
Oh, and also he has to vaguely oversee a baseball team that we own for reasons known only to God. Like, Nintendo owning the Mariners was the equivalent of that period of time where Disney owned the Queen Mary. Like, it just kind of happened due to political circumstances, and everyone was just like, I don't know, just make it work. Fuck it.
Yeah, at some point somebody said, hey, some Japanese executive said, hey, I like baseball, and voila.
It's even dumber. I think the situation was the team was in some kind of peril, and they were just looking, and the city was just like looking to corporate people around the city to buy it.
Yeah.
Just to like shore up its foundations. And Nintendo was just kind of there with the checkbook trying to prove that they're a good old American company. And they're like, okay, here's a check. And it's like, man, if y'all just held on to it and sold like 10 years later than you did, you'd have made like $4 billion.
It's pretty expensive way to get Ken Griffey Jr. onto a game box.
There you go. Put him in that uniform.
Bloody good player, though.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So like Reggie would have been a great answer for either of these, because he, like, regardless of how much of it was persona and how much of it was really him, I earnestly believe he had strongly held opinions that if he held the title of CEO beyond his fiefdom, boy, we would have gotten to see him. We would have gotten to see him put into effect.
Yeah.
But he's not there anymore. And so I've alluded to it. Like, for me, Tsubasa Sakaguchi, who I was talking about the Swiss Saran, one of the principals on Labo, potentially the ideator for it. I want to give you this man's career, and then we can figure out where he should go, because either of these positions is absolutely fucking chaotic. Here is his credits. His first credit is character designer on Twilight Princess. Then he was just generally designer on Big Brain Academy Wii degree. These are back-to-back years. Then he went to do 2D design for Wii Fit. Then he did design support for Wii Sport Resort. Then he went back to being a character designer for Wii Fit Plus, which does not have very many characters to design because most of them are just fucking Miis. Then he was the Nintendo 3DS menu designer. This is the next year.
Nice.
Then he was the art director for all of Nintendo Land. And then he was back to character design for New Super Luigi U. Again, there's not that many unique characters in New Super Luigi U. There just aren't. And then he was the director of Splatoon. What in any of his career arc said, yep, that man's ready to direct a video game? Nothing.
They were quite explicit, weren't they, about Splatoon at the time? The notion
They were.
that it was like giving, some of their, less like experienced developers, at least at that level of seniority that they were occupying for that game, a chance to make something. And again, it's a case of desperation to some extent, wasn't it? Like desperation and experimentation that happens when Nintendo sort of hits the rocks a little bit that, has paid dividends for sunnier weather. With how many, like I said, it's many times Splatoon sold remarkably well on Wii U, considering it was dead and not many people had it. But obviously, Splatoon 2 and 3 have just sold a great many copies, and it seems like you've got a very, absolutely veritable ongoing franchise here that'll go on to the next system, and goodness knows how long from there. But what the genesis of it is very much like, let's kind of. Because we've got this situation where presumably at that point a lot of, as we've somewhat arrived at in very different circumstances with Switch, where it's like the senior kind of prime development assets are on stuff for the next thing. So how do you have content for this device that we're still trying to sell stuff because we want to generate money, and people do own it and stuff, but you kind of just fill in time. It was to a fair degree, as well as presumably some internal kind of objectives that they were satisfying in terms of giving people a chance to learn and to show what they could do for the future. But that's the kind of mode they were in, and it created something that, has not been that easy for them to come by, sort of something that feels genuinely novel for them. And Splatoon was, and that's, kind of one of the things that I guess, when they settle into what's happened with Switch, where it's so successful and it's, kind of a much more kind of, managed transition and drawn out, because the Switch just kept selling, for such a long time. You don't get that to the same degree, do you? Certainly it's much less visible to the public as well. Like whatever's going on in there, whatever sort of changes are being made, presumably to grapple with the challenges of the next hardware generation. We're just not going to see it manifest in things like, let's have these people just try working on a kind of experimental game, and we may as well just put it out because what else have we got? Ultra Smash and whatever. The Animal Crossing board game. God.
Oh God. Yeah. So the funny thing is, all right. So his first major director gig, or his first director gig, is Splatoon, and then he doesn't work on any more Splatoon games. He's gone, and then he's the software lead for Labo. So I don't know what division of the company, as either hardware or software, he would be more unprepared to handle. The answer is probably hardware. But the idea of like the man who said no cardboard and rubber bands being in charge of the hardware design, I think gives me some opportunity to create real fucking conflict. And so the question is,
well, that should be the dividing line, shouldn't it? There should be the CEO of hardware and then the CEO of cardboard.
Yes, exactly. I mean, that's fun. Well, CEO of cardboard and CEO of software, like the actual.
No, the hardware division is now exclusively cardboard.
That's where we're going.
Like basically real hardware, fake hardware, but yeah, that's fine. It can all be fake. It's fine.
And then the question is, who would this most absolutely infuriate in the Nintendo orbit? And my first thought was, well, the crew over at Monolith would probably be driven insane by this. But then my thought was, no, they might be crazy enough to go, okay, let's make this work. So I'm looking in one direction of a man who can't say no to a piece of hardware, who might find this particular willingness to generate new and avant-garde control options frustrating because of his compulsion to use all of the control options. And I'm looking at the newly reintroduced CEO of software, Mr. Sakurai, who is now going to try to make every piece of cardboard work with every piece of Nintendo game. Because it's absolutely required, even if you have to download an app onto the cardboard to make it work.
And every piece of cardboard will be designed by his wife.
Well, he doesn't get to design the cardboard. He's going to be mad because the buttons are the same shape.
Yep.
Do you get the Labo kit for the Kid Icarus easel?
Yeah, it's got wings.
It doesn't have to be an actual plastic stand for your 3DS anymore. You make it out of cardboard. It's more environmentally conscious.
Well, it is, but it's actually chest mounted. So it's a big vest you wear, and you put the game into your chest, and you flap your shoulder blades like they're wings in order to fly.
Isn't that a game in Wii Fit Plus, by the way?
Yes. It is. That's where I got the idea from.
Yeah, I thought there had to be. You don't just think of that out of nothing, do you? There's got to be a seed for that somewhere.
I mean, the seed for that is these two in a room debating the next piece of cardboard is a very funny image, because in Sakurai's mind, he's like, okay, I just have to drive him towards something that will work for my game. And in Sakaguchi's mind, he's like, yeah, but what if we used rubber bands to make a piano? And Sakurai's now trying to imagine having to enforce the Mario team to make piano work as a accessory or a usable controller for the next 3D Mario game.
Well, you have to go augmented reality, where it's like a remake of Mario 64, and at a certain point, the cardboard piano starts trying to bite you.
You have to wear 2 switches on each eye
Which,
to get 3D.
For the record, I think that in Mario 64 may also be a reference to the Japanese film House. So that's twice that we've managed to reference that this week.
I want Sakaguchi's and his direct reports to walk into a meeting with their counterparts on the software side with a piece of cardboard that has 2 large holes in it, and his intention is not immediately clear. And then when pressed on it, he lifts up this large piece of cardboard, puts it on his head looking like it's a goddamn sombrero, and then puts a switch into each of the holes so they're sitting in front of his eyes, creating binocularized 3D using 2 switches and a tremendous amount of cardboard. And for him to just not look at them because the switches will be in the way, but gesticulate towards them with his face and say, "The future," with absolute sincerity, while Sakurai despairingly is now trying to figure out how he's going to have make the next Smash Brothers work in this particular insane configuration. And the answer is 16-player Smash on long vertical stages. You have to actually scroll your eye, like you close your right eye while the action's taking place on the left screen, and then close your left eye when it moves to the right screen. It's very convoluted, but tournament players will love it. That's what because it's a long vertical stage.
Because every stage is the ice climber stage from Melee.
Every stage is long and flat, just like they love it. Yeah, I think this is going to cause significant conflict between the CEOs, but I think one step below your directors, that's where you're going to see the fireworks, because you're going to have Miyamoto as creative fellow, I believe is his title.
Yeah, someone needs to hold his management of theme parks and movies to account, don't they? I mean, there must be a proper accountability mechanism for that. I don't think we've got it just yet.
I mean, theme parks is under cardboard because it's hardware. And movies is under software. Problem solved. We're here. Can I physically touch it? Then it's cardboard. If I cannot physically touch it, then it's software. If it is a distribution platform that I can physically touch, but the product I cannot touch, is intangible. So the movie, I can't touch the movie. I can touch the Blu-ray disc holding the movie. But fundamentally, I am buying...
So it'll only ship out in cardboard cases.
Yes, exactly. And the disc will be cardboard somehow. Unclear how, but best minds are on it. And also our worst minds, because our best minds quit when we gave them the idea. I I think that we rename the divisions CEO of Cardboard and CEO of Intangibles. And I legitimately believe that the investment community would go absolutely apeshit. They'd be thrilled. They'd be thrilled. You could say we are 100% recycled product company. But like I said, I think the conflict isn't at the CEO level, although there will be plenty of that. I think it's every director immediately below them trying desperately to have them removed before their next idea lands in their studios. So the Mario team, the Zelda team, I assume Monolith at this point would be begging Namco Bandai to buy them back. Just please, God, get us out of here. Everything's gone wrong. But the teams in North America would be particularly befuddled by this because this would be so antithetical to them that I'm really excited to hear like the reports coming out of Retro beyond like brisket, when it's like, you can't make brisket on cardboard. It will just catch on fire. Like, that's the reports I'm looking for. That's what I want. That's my vision. So, gentlemen, fuck up Nintendo. Do it. Go.
It's the Labo kit that you just make the 4 from the logo of Metroid Prime 4.
Yes! Metroid Prime 4 is just a cardboard 4.
That's what they've been cooking up for however many years it is now. 7?
Structural integrity is really hard in cardboard.
Not that Retro have been on it for the whole 7 years, but 7 years since the 4 logo was shared with, and I take that very seriously that they shared such privileged information as a digit with us.
I hope when they took it over, the only thing they were sent is like a 12K rendering of that video and nothing else. Like no other assets, just a giant video of a 4. And they're like, it's up to y'all now, boys. Have fun. Oh God. It's like 1313, but with many less digits. Many less digits. 1313, way too many digits. 4, perfect.
So what are we being asked here, James? Are we asked to just make stupid cardboard things? Or
No. Your job is to staff the CEO positions.
Well, I mean, can I hire from the outside?
And also, what's the dividing line that you would make, John? That we know what Sony has done in terms of what it thinks. So that again, I hope there's an actual problem that they're solving there that between those two things.
I hope there isn't.
We've had our own construction here of cardboard tangibles, parenthetically cardboard, and intangibles. But you could divide that pie along any axis you like.
Well, I mean, really, like what I would be looking at here is it's such bullshit. I can barely even say it with a straight face.
Here we go.
But on the software side, I would look for somebody who is an original thinker, a visionary, someone who is daring, but someone who also knows how to
Dyack.
This is fucking Molyneux, isn't it?
How to communicate their vision in an effective manner, and then on the platform side, I would look for somebody who has a proven track record of delivering, but also getting people enchanted by their vision.
I feel like that's a loaded word.
And hardware. So on the software side, Itagaki.
Oh, Jesus!
On the hardware side, Tommy Tallarico.
Oh my God, we're all going to prison. Everyone's going to prison.
That's what I would say. And just throw them in a room and just watch them go. Just watch them go.
Everyone involved is going to every
watch
prison.
The synergy. Just watch it.
Oh my God.
I can just see it. I can just see Tallarico walking onto the set of Itagaki's terrorist film after steps out of his yellow Lamborghini, and
the second Mario movie is gonna be so dark.
That's right. It's gonna be so dark. It's gonna be so dark.
Yeah, it's like that Metroid
Nintendo
Prime
of Europe post an ISIS video.
That Metroid Prime 4 logo, an NFT now.
Fuck.
Also, he's got credit for writing the music for that logo for some reason. Or he attributes it to himself.
Music for the logo. I can't even remember now. It's probably just like ominous whooshing sounds behind it.
It is actually just.
He wrote it. Don't argue. He did it.
Yeah,
he's going to be in his contract. I retroactively wrote all the music for everything. Yeah. Oh my god.
So yeah, visionaries.
John's just created the most dysfunctional and a different kind of. It's not conflict.
Another way, when John was winding up there and he was struggling to get it out, I was just like, "What's the worst thing I could think of?" And I came up with Molyneux, and John, to be fair,
it's close.
Significantly worse, I'd say.
Over delivered is the word I would use for this.
Absolutely.
I was looking for people who would be wholly incompatible.
I mean, wholly incompatible with what? With continuing to exist? Yes, absolutely.
Well, with their visions, I would think, but also both of their visions being inherently incredibly flawed.
Itagaki is now in charge of Nintendo Directs. It's all of them. Everything's gone wrong. They all
honestly, look like hostage
yes.
situations.
Yeah, exactly.
No, Guillaume, they all are hostage situations. He wants authenticity.
Yeah.
Tell them about your cat game. Just there's somebody just standing there with a rifle.
Look into the camera and read what's on the paper.
I just want someone in like black fatigues and a ski mask with a rifle standing behind the next set of twee developers they have, telling us about their fucking cat game.
Yep.
It's tea time with cats. You're trying to brew a great teas at your tea house, but your cat, Mr. Whisker. Oh God, please no.
Well, yeah, but I mean, the reason why the gunmen with balaclavas are there is to make sure that the developers of such games rename the cats things after plastic explosives and whatever else, isn't it? To make it compatible with the vision of the company now.
I just like the idea that like they get smacked with the butt of the rifle. Be more twee, damn it! This actually, yeah. I've come back around on this. This is the best Nintendo Direct ever.
Yeah, it's pretty much the best.
Fuck your cat game. Oh shit, I'm there. I'm like, you know what? At first, I thought your vision was wholly incompatible with the image that Nintendo wants, and then I thought about it again and realized, no, your vision is wholly incompatible with what society wants. And I'm there for it.
But I like these choices because they both have sort of an inherent belief in themselves.
That's true. That's wildly misplaced.
It's wildly misplaced.
Yes. They should definitely never be the single chief executive of anything. They definitely shouldn't be like covalent CEOs because
they'll keep each other in line. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
What if, the possibilities are? What if they don't get along at all? But then you realize, okay, but what if they do get along? And that's so much worse.
Exactly. Which is worse.
Like
everybody loses. It's like Alien versus Predator. No matter who wins, we all lose.
But if they get along, what if it's Alien and Predator as a buddy cop film? It's like, that's much worse.
It's a shame. It's a shame. It is a shame. AVP2 was so joyless that we didn't get to like, what if they teamed up actually? Which if they kept going, they would have done it eventually. Surely.
Oh, absolutely. Sure. Alien plus Predator. Ooh.
I mean, they've already doing that with the Godzilla and Kong thing, right? Like, it's Godzilla cross Kong now. So, it would have happened if we'd had further AVP movies. But again, that second one, woof. I mean, the first one isn't exactly like a masterpiece or anything, but the second one,
we might have gotten to AVP as allies fighting Jason X on the moon. Like that would have been where that's where I want.
Just keep grafting the IP onto it. It just turns into this snowball of stuff.
Yeah, and then eventually it gets crossed over with Monster Hunter, so you're, fighting
Rathalos.
Rathalos.
It's true, yeah. There you go.
Well, because at least the first AVP movie was directed by the guy that did the Monster Hunter movie, right? And all the Resident Evil movies. Paul Anderson, right? So,
yeah.
The man who scammed Sony for billions of dollars.
Yep, it's a tantalizing glimpse into what could have been.
I almost I forgot that that was him, probably because he didn't put his wife in it.
It's true. Well, I again,
unless she was a
about
predator.
it.
I don't know.
Maybe.
Just underneath.
I mean, he certainly was towards Sony's pocketbooks. I just want to make it clear in case you are a newer listener and haven't heard this story. At one point, Sony had 2 directors who were making really, really bad sci-fi, gothy, dark bullshit films, Underworld and Resident Evil, that were both terrible, and in both cases starred their wives.
Yeah,
or in the
it's kind of like in the good old days. Like I think, Charlie Bronson was in a million movies with his wife until she passed away. Sadly, Jill Ireland. And it's kind of like, well, with actors, I could see it a bit more. Like okay, just he's earning a living. He wants to actually spend some more time with his wife while he's doing it.
Also, they've got chemistry on screen, I would assume.
Yeah, Bronson and chemistry not really.
No, Bronson had lots of chemistry, but it was like the chemistry of blowing things up.
Yeah, the chemistry of plastic explosives, or the nitroglycerin, or no. But I mean, it's but you could kind of you can understand the impulse, but in terms of anybody signing off on it, you would think, okay, with actors, fine. When it's the director, it seems a bit too high level to really go. But those Resident Evil movies made a lot of money, didn't they? They just kept, however good they are.
I don't know that that's true, though.
They did make a lot of money. I mean, I doubt they spent that much of those. They went a lot. I think it was much more the old school model of like, well, expect them to draw less, so just cut the budget enough that that's still like a success. And I think that's how they ended up making so many of them. I mean, I know Sony in that arena in particular could be guilty of some quite silly things, but I don't think they're so silly as to keep greenlighting those movies if they weren't making money.
I mean, Underworld had like 5 of them, and I'm pretty sure they were not. So I don't know, but like, yeah. So again, Sony Pictures only has one CEO, and that division once got blackmailed by North Korea. Like, I just want you to think about that.
See, maybe that is the problem they're trying to solve by having 2 CEOs in this case. It's like, well, it's harder to blackmail 2 people.
Sony looked at all their divisions and said, no, you need 2 parents.
Well, this is the good thing too. Also, if PSN gets hacked again, then it only affects one CEO.
I forgot they've also been the target of cyber criminals.
Yeah, and they took down PSN for what, 40 days or something?
Through the holidays as well. Yes.
Yeah, like
no notes.
Yeah,
everything went perfect.
Yeah, it's like everybody seems to forget about that, but yeah.
I want to point out that most recently Sony has been memed into putting Morbius back into theaters and is still insisting on releasing Kraven the Hunter.
Well, again, if they had 2 CEOs, that's 2 people you'd have to meme. So right. I mean, it's like 50% as likely to work. So I mean, it's maths at this point. It's a fucking great idea. I'm all for it.
But they did it to the wrong division. Like that's the
presumably it's a phased rollout, and the CEOs are going to sort of divide.
We're gonna put the former producer of the Underworld series and the former producer of the Resident Evil series and make them co-CEOs. It worked great for Rome. It's gonna work great here. It never worked great for Rome. Every time it was a disaster, and they did it like 5 times. Every time it either ended up in a war or one side being like, okay, you get the burned out Hulk of Rome. We're going to take all the money over here. Have fun. It never went well. Oh, Sony, thank you. Thank you for your, somebody needs to write we've got the Sega book. We've got the definitive Sega book, and it should have just been called Sega: a forensic accounting history. But it's not, because nobody had the gall to treat it like the economic crime that it was. Sony is writing new chapters in a book that hasn't even been written yet, with their all right, co-CEOs. what could go wrong? And the answer is we can't even begin to speculate what could go wrong because the cosmology of things that could go sideways is unknowable to us. We are stuck behind the light pollution of our cities that are run by singular entities and cannot see the heavens beyond, where leadership is a flat, infinite loop. It's like, I just can't wait to imagine, if you will, John has brought in television into this conversation. Imagine, if you will, Nolan Bushnell has been given the reins of Atari again when he got it back the first time, I think, and said, okay, I'm going to give a different CEO position to my home computer division and my console. Oh, God, wait, hold on, shit. Never mind, we actually know exactly how this can go wrong. My mistake. We've been here before. I'm excited for this because I fully anticipate one of these two individuals will be fired within 2 years and not replaced. And they're just going to do a reorg and not talk about it. But again, I point you in the direction of Sony Pictures with one hand raised and the other hand covering my face in shame. And remind you that in a large, diverse company with many, many divisions, it is very easy to hide for a while. That is, unless you have just recently completed. John, how much did Microsoft spend on Blizzard Activision King?
I believe it was $68 billion.
Yeah, it's really hard to start hiding.
68.9.
Yeah, it's really hard to hide after your division just spent $68.9 billion.
Yeah,
So
this was a point that Seren made last week. I don't know whether you got to this part yet, but basically, it completely reframes everything about the Microsoft's gaming ventures division when you do this, and their board, their investors will never look at it the same way again because
you're
they
a
just
cute little side project.
No, exactly. Mm-hmm. We've talked about it before. The Activision acquisitions, or quite a lot of the other Activision acquisitions over time, like the way that it could just seem to be very profligate with Microsoft's money to seemingly no obvious end, and it didn't matter. But now it's like, you've offered this, you created this huge kerfuffle. And, and also offered you have a gaming thing that actually makes money, with what Activision brings in. So, yeah, it does now. It seems kind of silly in a way to think, well, if you were happy with just putting this money into a black hole before, what's really changed? But, Therese pointed it out last week and you've pointed it out this week. It reframes the debate, if you completely, in a way that is much less forgiving, I think, of some of the things they've been doing with that division over the years.
Think about it this way. You're seeing somebody and they've got a good job, but they're not making a ton of money. But they bought a new car. They go out and they buy a new car. You've been seeing them for a while. It's reasonably serious. They bought a new car. It's a little expensive. You're probably thinking well, I mean, I'm not going to get too hard up on that. What's their current financial situation? I'm sure they've got it under control. I might not have bought a brand new car. I might not have bought that car. That car's a little expensive. Okay, whatever. Now let's take the story again. They didn't buy a new car. They bought a goddamn jet plane. You're going to look at it and go I don't think that was a financially sound decision. I'm going to pay a little bit more attention to their money because I don't know if I want to get in any deeper with this, with what is undoubtedly their monthly payment on a fucking jet plane. You got to manage your relationship sometimes.
Well, or something they just decided to buy a restaurant, and you're okay, you just paid a whole bunch of money for that restaurant out of nowhere. We'd better make that money back. So, yeah.
You come home and your spouse has said, I've just decided to start selling makeup. Oh no, it's an MLM. But you come home and your spouse said, I bought an expensive restaurant. You're oh, we're bankrupt.
Does this say that that fraudster tried to buy the Islanders?
Yes,
it was just like a spousal kind of spat of some sort.
You come home and your spouse has bought the secondary team in a major sports franchise in a city where they are like by far the number 2 team.
And it's like, honey, to be fair, I really thought the NHL would actually find me out a lot quicker than they did. But, what can you say?
I could have tried to buy the Rangers. Look, think about I'm saving money here. Oh my God. It's just, yeah, like if you spend 69 billion, let's just round up to a cool 70 billion and make me go in front of fucking Congress to justify being allowed to spend 70 billion, which if you forget Microsoft had to do, and address the European courts and have to go to fucking Japan to try to get deals approved. Yeah, I'm going to be paying a little bit more attention to what you do because now you've made me get on a fucking plane and fly to Brussels to justify being allowed to spend $90 billion or whatever. Because the asking price, that's a lot of money. But you figure out how much money they had to spend in, I don't know, dealing with all the PR required to get this approved.
To facilitating that transaction. And I've got to think it probably, I don't know, depends how rigorously they planned it out. It doesn't reek of the most rigorous planning to me. I bet they overshot how much that was all going to cost, to facilitate just the transaction itself. No, it's it seems to me, again, they're thinking of another sports team situation, when everyone was kind of queuing up to buy the Clippers to be the good guy,
Yes.
after the previous owner disgraced himself so completely. It does feel like they thought they were going to be, it was going to be some huge PR win, that they were going to be the heroic people coming in to, kind of turn around this company that, again, has completely disgraced itself. But it's mostly been sort of embarrassing. And, I mean...
just owning the Clippers. It turns out that's...
extremely costly. And when what measure of goodwill they ever got from it, I mean, they're kind of just pissing away, shuttering developers and all this other stuff. So, I mean, it's just... I don't know. Again, it's so... You're privy to so little of kind of the full facts, obviously, in the public realm, but... It doesn't feel like whatever, kind of intentions and objectives they set out with have exactly translated to, what's actually occurred.
I am extremely excited for Clipped, which is a mini series about the entire Clippers fiasco. As I had to explain that to my significant other this weekend when we saw the ad for it, I'm like, oh God, all right, where do I even start with the Donald Sterling story? Where do I look? If the Clippers had 2 CEOs, Donald Sterling and then the woman who recorded him having conversations while also wearing what would best be described as an extra on Cantino Bites visor, I think we would have a much better situation. We wouldn't have had the team literally take their jerseys off midcourt and walk out. Things would have been much better. Steve Ballmer wouldn't be building like a $7 billion arena. John, what part of LA is that being built in?
The new one?
Yeah. The one where he's like, I don't want to be in Staples anymore. Or whatever they call that crypto scam.
It's crypto, the hallowed halls of crypto.com arena.
I think, is that one in Inglewood?
It's in Inglewood. They're spending like $4 billion on a development in Inglewood.
Yeah, which is not a great area, by the way.
Well, if you spend $4 billion, maybe you can make it a great area.
Yeah, that is true.
But, like, again, he bought the team to be the savior and to own an NBA franchise. And now he's spending like $4 billion because he didn't want to live with the Lakers in their shitty arena. And, yeah, Staples sucks. If you've never been in it, it's not great. And I'm not going to call it Crypto.com because that's a different team, I'm not going to say which one, whose owner is involved in all kinds of scams because I might get sued. But I will say Crypto.com is a scam, kids. Don't go to Crypto.com. Don't go to Crypto.com arena either. That part of LA is new, but also not very interesting. So
no. It's just funny. I mean, to just give you an idea, I was just like looking at some of this thing. I just wanted to give an idea of the scale of how much Microsoft's acquiring of Blizzard and all that stuff was. So they paid $68.9 billion.
It's a lot of money.
If you bought pretty much like, this is not exact, but if you bought, but the average price of an NHL franchise is $1.3 billion.
You could own the whole league.
You could buy out the entire NHL as a league for about $42 billion.
We're taking the NHL private, baby.
Yeah. Like, you could literally, with what they pay, you could buy out an entire sports league.
That would be really
major
funny.
Sports league.
I own all the NHL teams. What's your impetus to make them compete? Fuck.
Hubris.
Yeah, that's right. I want all my teams to win the Stanley Cup. That's not possible.
Because I can. Right. Because I can.
I want all my teams to win the Cup. Sir, that's not possible.
Yeah.
Remember, don't let your dreams just stay dreams. Own every team in the NHL.
Right.
What if Microsoft just bought every team in the NHL?
Yeah, it's like that will put you on the radar of any executive out there.
All right. So, John, how many teams are in the NHL? Is it 30?
There's 32.
32. Okay. All right. So I'm Microsoft. I buy every single team. And let's say for the sake of argument, I have to spend more for some than the others. So I get up to the full Activision price. Yep. Because there's like one team that's like, no, I'm the 32nd team. I'm going to hold the fuck out.
Yeah, as soon as word gets out that Microsoft is buying literally the entire league, somebody's going to raise the price.
That's right. Like the first
price
two
is going up, isn't it?
The first two people may be like, well, that's just a coincidence. But by like 26, they're going to be like, no, I have a good feel of what they're up to. All right,
yeah.
But let's say...
and for perspective, I think the most valuable, according to the list I saw, the most valuable franchise is the Maple Leafs, and they are worth $2.65 billion. So
okay, but exchange rates right now make that really easy. So like, all right, but let's say you get there, you pull it off, you get all the teams up. That's 32 new CEOs you get to mint in your company. Imagine the conflicts. Mm-hmm. John, Bruce Boudreau, CEO of wherever the fuck the Coyotes are right now.
Yeah. Salt Lake City, I guess. I mean, they're nowhere now. Right.
Yeah, they are in Utah right now, I think. Utah is Salt like Lake the City. Castaway home.
Yeah, exactly. It really is like the Utah Jazz and the Salt Lake City Coyotes. Like, that's just, it's like, please rename your teams. They make no sense.
I think they are not taking the Coyotes name with them. I know that much.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of a shape. Like Utah Yotes might have worked a bit, but because they were also trying to get you won't have the weirdness of like. Yet, funnily enough, the Jazz name did not originate in Utah.
What?
Yeah, strangely enough.
They were also trying to get their hands on the A's because the A's currently are homeless because the Las Vegas hasn't approved the move, even though they've already basically backed. Oh.
Yeah, right. And I mean, you really have to.
Microsoft buys the A's, puts them back in Oakland, builds them a new arena, and then let's say, aren't the White Sox kind of playing in this space a little bit too?
I think there's the issue with that stadium. They need a solution, don't they?
I was there 2 years ago. It's not great, but Microsoft just buys every team that's pulling you better build us a new stadium, and builds the stadium. They'd still have money left over from this initiative, and they would have kept teams in their cities. With the A's, I'm going to say it's Oakland's team, even though it starts in Philadelphia. I get that. I understand.
Yeah, they've moved around a fair bit, haven't they?
They were in Kansas City as well, but those teams have got teams since then, so we're going to say that's Oakland's team. It's fine. And then they're the saviors of baseball. You know what else they could do? They could end the fucking blackouts. So then they're really the saviors of baseball. There's like 9 teams right now that are blacked out in Iowa. 9. Which means conceivably 18 games could be blacked out. That is pretty much the entire list of games.
Of course. There's only 32.
Why is every team in California blacked out in Hawaii? So to get you to go to games? It doesn't make any fucking sense. They're 2,000 miles away. It's so stupid. But again, buy all these teams, That's 32 new CEOs you get to mint. Then you can have all the conflict. I think this is too small. GX gave us too small a problem. What if Nintendo had 2 CEOs? What if Nintendo had 10 CEOs? Let's get fucking crazy. Let's divide up the responsibility in such a way that it's incredibly minute. What if you are just the CEO of the card business? Remember we had a conversation like 3 years ago because the card business had dropped off and we're like, the AVP of cards is fucked if he doesn't turn
because I haven't got someone at the CEO level overseeing it.
But you know what? The next year they had turned it around. Numbers went up. Make that man a fucking CEO. He's earned it. He's turned that division around by like, it's definitely not related to the fact that his trading card business was largely being hampered by a pandemic that prevented people from being present with each other. No. He turned it around through keen business insight. Therefore, CEO of cards. Not to be confused with CEO of cardboard. That's a different fucking position. And they will not source from the same paper provider because that is competition. But CEO of paper stock. I mean, that's a position that needs to exist if you've got a CEO of cards and a CEO of cardboard. This is the person responsible for acquisition of paper product.
My particular CEO, I think that needs executive level. CEO of characters, original characters created strictly to be in Warriors-based spin-offs of existing franchises. We need somebody to get a control of that again, don't we, after Hyrule Warriors?
Can there be a CEO specifically of WarioWare Incorporated? What does that person do? Unclear. Unfucking clear. But he's there. He has an office. We ask him to stay in it. He is required contractually to eat only garlic. It is a very convoluted position.
But it only has to be for a few seconds at a time.
He comes to meetings very rarely, but for very short periods. I think if you really want to have conflict, you don't want to have like 2 trenches dug parallel to one another. That's a head-to-head conflict, and ultimately somebody's going to gain the upper hand. What you want is like city-state style politics where everybody's afraid of everybody else gaining a single goddamn inch. Because if anybody gets the upper hand in any of their conflicts, everyone else is going to descend upon them like the Huns coming down the plain to make sure you understand that, you are not advancing 1 inch. This is crabs in a bucket. That's what we need. That's the Nintendo of the... Because, competition breeds ideas. So I think if you can have more I want a CEO of CEOs. Are they responsible for telling the other CEOs what to do? No. Their job is to figure out what's the next CEO position that we can create. It is a very limited position because once they create them, they lose that authority. But in that moment, they are power. It's it. Like, that's it. That's what we need. We need as many CEOs. Make every employee a CEO. There. It's a totally flat structure. Everyone has veto authority on everything. Do you want conflict? Let me introduce you to the man who killed 11 Yoshi products because he's just fucking sick of Yarn Yoshi in some kind of like fabric configuration. This man has put Good Feel out of business by vetoing anything fabric based.
Anything good or anything feel.
It's right. Hey, is that texture cloth? Is that a terry cloth Yoshi? Fuck that shit. Canceled. Also, terry cloth Yoshi is another good name for this episode. Yeah, I think it's it. I think that's the ultimate end game here. Every employee is a CEO.
Absolute power begets absolute corruption.
That's right. So what if everybody's absolutely powerful and corrupt?
That's right.
There's not enough money to go around. Even FIFA has people who don't get paid. Presumably. I don't think everybody's able to take bribes in FIFA. Somebody's got to be the person who reports the people taking bribes so that they might advance and then be the bribe taker. It's a cycle. It's an assembly line. It's an assembly line of corruption. And on that, I think it's time for us to end the show. Gentlemen, do you have any final thoughts on how to create, let's say, an Escape from New York style business plan for Nintendo? And is Snake Plissken eligible to be a CEO? It's an important question.
Yeah.
CEO
Since
of
he's
what?
a psychopath.
You know what? You know what? That's probably the most accurate thing you've said. Like, even CEOs who run their companies well, like, you have to have a certain kind of brainworm to do. Because I know there's people who are like, CEOs, they don't do a goddamn thing. No. I've known quite a few of them. They get up at like 4 a.m. and start working, and then work until like 1 p.m. and then go to sleep, and they might know their children's names.
Yeah.
They're a different kind of like mentally deranged than you think. You think they're like cold and calculating. No. They're like, we talk about people who are motivated. They're too motivated, generally, to rise to the top of a company like that. No. There's something else in play. And it's bad. It's brainworms. It's a different brainworm, though. Mm-hmm. So what if we gave everybody the brainworms? Icarus can't fly too close to the sun when everyone is the sun.
I think we've given all of our listeners the brainworms right here.
That's true. All right, so you can send your emails to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. That's rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. We planned to do 2 emails. We did one very stupid email instead, and we gave Tomonobu Itagaki the right to turn every Nintendo Direct into an ISIS video. So
it's actually his birthright, but I digress.
Nintendo, why did you post that video? You can send your questions, comments, concerns, angry letters about that segment, which are totally justified, and I absolutely understand, and apologize now, but you could still excoriate us appropriately to rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. That's rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. rfn@nintendoworldreport.com. I have to say it 3 times because we have 39 CEOs who each like to hear it said a different way because their testing tells them the audience responds when it's said rfn@nintendoworldreport.com in a nice neutral tone. So, Greg, music.
Yes, so yeah, we had a request in just a few days ago from listener BSK, who requested a piece from Xenoblade Chronicles 3, A Life Sent On, because it's a fitting piece not only for when it's used in the game, but for a real life loss as well, as BSK mentioned that their dad passed away on May the 12th, which was indeed Mother's Day as well. So certainly there's no arguing at all with that point that the Life Sent On, it's essentially the main theme of Xenoblade 3, and it's very central to the narrative of the game, the concept of, it being played with the 2 flutes of the 2 protagonists, and they were like custom made flutes, weren't they?
Yes.
That were actually used to play.
CEO of the custom instrument division.
No, so clearly, they put a lot into this, song specifically, and everything it kind of represents in the game about the job of the protagonist in the beginning is seeing on the people who've passed in the war that they're fighting on each side of that war and everything. So yeah, I'm not surprised that this would be requested in such a solemn occasion. I'm very sorry to hear that, but it is by the very definition of apt for such an occasion.
Yeah, so our condolences. So yeah, that'll do it for us this week. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Later.
Bye-bye.